To Singapore and speak to James Dorsey, Adjunct Senior Fellow at the S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies. Welcome to the programme, James. The Doha summit was previewed as possibly coming up with some concrete measures for those countries in attendance to place pressure on Israel. Where did they go wrong, and what sort of tools do they have to be able to place that pressure, James?
Adnan, good to be with you. I think what you've seen is expectations were far too high and unrealistic. There is only that much that Arab and Muslim states can do. I think that there are three things that came out of this summit or four things that came out of this summit. One, the palpable anger at particularly Israel was evident in the statement, as well as in the speeches that various leaders gave at the conference. Second of all, I think that one thing you will see next week at the United Nations General Assembly is a move by at least some of the members of the Organization for Islamic Cooperation to suspend Israeli membership in the United Nations on the grounds that it has violated the Charter. I think the second thing that you may see is Gulf and Arab and Muslim support by joining the South African case in the Islamic Court of Justice against Israel, in which South Africa accuses Israel of genocide. And the third thing you're probably going to see is a greater move, particularly among the Gulf countries, towards integration of their air and defense capabilities, air and missile defense capabilities. Now, that's something that the United States has long wanted the Gulf states to do. So that is not so much a measure against the U.S., but actually a reaching out to the United States in terms of trying to ensure that the U.S. remains a reliable rather than an unreliable guarantor of regional security.
That's very interesting, James, because if there is some kind of future collective security arrangement for Middle Eastern nations, would that not actually diminish American influence? Because if they can't trust the Americans, with Donald Trump apparently having known in the morning before the Israeli jets bombed Doha, if they can't trust the Americans to keep them safe, they have to do something for themselves together. And yet there are countries who are part of the Abraham Accords who may not agree with that and still side with the U.S. in terms of security arrangements.
I think there's several issues here. One is your last point, which is clear that those countries that have diplomatic relations with Israel, particularly the five Arab countries, United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Morocco, Egypt, and Jordan, at this point are not going to tinker with those relations. I think that's been very clear, and it's one reason why there's only a really mild reference to that in the final statement of the conference. The second issue is joint or enhanced defense cooperation does not necessarily reduce U.S. influence. Keep in mind that the bulk of the or much of the weaponry that's going to be integrated in such a defense cooperation is U.S. made. And as the leaders were meeting, you had a joint military exercise led by the United States and Egypt, in which Gulf states and Jordan participated. So I'm not sure that enhanced regional cooperation necessarily leads to reduced U.S. influence. More important is going to be that the United States will have to demonstrate that it is a reliable partner. That's not something the United States has demonstrated in recent years.
James, could you expand a bit about the effects of Israel's political isolation, which you referred to earlier, which Benjamin Netanyahu has admitted to? If it's only political isolation, is that something that Tel Aviv can handle?
In fact, Netanyahu went much further than what your correspondent in Jerusalem accurately described. There was, in a conference yesterday attended by the largest U.S. congressional delegation ever to visit Israel, Netanyahu basically acknowledged that Israel would be isolated, accepted that, said Israel would have to become a modern-day Sparta, the Greek state that fought against Athens in ancient times, and would have to become totally self-reliant. Now, the interesting point here is not only that his acceptance of that, but in implicit in that is a rupture or a breaking with a cardinal principle of Israeli policy, which was you always ensure that the United States has your backing. An Israeli Sparta may no longer do that. The pain is going to be felt. There's no question about it. You saw yesterday Spain canceling a $800 million military contract with Elbit Systems, one of Israel's largest military industries. You're seeing boycotts across the board by civil society, companies being much more cautious, and that's something Israelis are going to feel. And the question is, at what point do the Israelis feel that the price is getting too high?
Ancient Sparta was a violent place, James. Thank you very much indeed, James Dorsey.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.